All right, just to remind everybody that we are a volunteer-appointed planning commission. So we're just like you. We live in your neighborhoods. So we have a vested interest in the community just like you do. We're appointed by the county council on a 3-year term. And that's how it works up here. So we're not any more really than you. We just happen to volunteer. Our wives kick us out on Tuesdays.
Mine too.
All right, so just to give you an idea of how I'd like to run this is, I'm not going to put a time limit on anybody right now, but I reserve the right to possibly put a 3-minute timer on people just in case we need to get to that point. I might help you steer you back on track if you get off into the weeds on something that's not helpful for us tonight regarding the general plan. That might happen. Please think about what you've heard tonight from your other citizens that might have come up to the microphone, and try not to regurgitate. It doesn't really help us that much. We tend to start to fall asleep. We hear you better when you're concise. So think about that. And again, just to reiterate, we're not making any laws or any code tonight. We're simply trying to make this general plan phase 2 document the best we can based on what staff's done, what our input has done in the last couple of years, and with your input tonight. With that, I welcome the first comment.
I'm David Maxfield. I live in Kimball Junction. I appreciate the work you're doing, especially as volunteers, as experts here. So I have 5 really brief points. The first point is that it seems that we're building off state estimates that I hope that the county doesn't feel that it has to accept. Just because the state estimates that we may grow by 100,000 doesn't mean we have to say, welcome, come 100,000. That's point 1. Point 2 is I'm totally in favor of the smart growth kinds of principles here. I think most of us are not advocates of sprawl for all the reasons that your staff has already advocated. But I believe there are certain things that I see have been left out. One is I don't see any upper limits on the estimates for the different communities within. So I live in Kimball Junction. If there were 50,000 more people that came into Fox Point and New Park, that would change the character so dramatically that it would be really bad. I want condensed growth, I want smart growth, but I want to see limits, very clear limits, so that it doesn't turn into 5- and 7-story buildings there. Second, when I've lived in smart growth designed areas, such as inner city Seattle, one of the things that made smart growth work was that there were 10 or 20 or 30 connectors from one smart growth condensed area to the other smart growth condensed areas. Here in places like Kimball Junction, there are only about 2 roads or 3 roads that connect a high density area to the other areas. So these connectors become very much overwhelmed. And I'm not just talking about roads, I'm talking about trails. Become overwhelmed. You can no longer ride a bike on them. They're pedestrian trails for getting to and from work or to and from a bank, but they stop being the amenity that currently they are. And so my final point would be that with smart growth, I endorse the notion of mixed use so that people can live and play and work and shop in their community without having to get into a car. But I want to add that within Park City, many of those amenities are things like trails and recreation opportunities that can be overwhelmed with growth of population. So that if you add another 10 or 20,000 people to Kimball Junction, that trail system is no longer an amenity. It becomes an artery rather than a place you could run or walk or bicycle or ski. Right? It just changes the character. So the last point I want to make was there was a warning that it could be within the next couple of weeks that we're ready to forward a proposal to the council. And I with the large number of people here, how many of you feel like this is ready to forward to a council?
Let me bring it back. So just address us and not that way you can get going.
Okay.
Let me just, Mr. David, let me just bring a couple of points up. First of all, since I've gone on this commission, I've learned that we are really the Snyderville Basin Awareness Commission, meaning that a lot of things, most of the time, it all comes to us first, and through Rick and the paper and just word of mouth, a lot of decisions, recommendations that we forward onto the county council, oftentimes is not the recommendation that goes through, and it's because a lot of times we don't hear everything. It's not until we've made it aware to the community that this is happening, this is going, that the council hears different feedback. It's oftentimes better feedback than we heard, and so we hear different decisions. So our recommendation is simply that, a recommendation based on the hearings and the 2 years that we've been working on this to the county council, and the process basically is going to start over again with them in a more condensed fashion. So we're going to take everything we hear, try to button up this document, and get it to them so that then it can go to this round 2 with them.
I understand and endorse the process. I just don't think it's ready to button up and send to the next level yet.
One more question for you, though. You said you wanted upper limits on density, and I have a hard time understanding that, because how do you quantify a hard number on that? At what point? So what you're saying is that your services are going to decrease. So that's probably the metric you're looking at. That it's traffic, it's walkability, and crowdedness.
Actually, I was thinking more of a number of people. So within a Kimball Junction area, if you draw a circle around Kimball Junction and say, are we going to allow 25,000 more people or 50,000 more people? I want to hear what the number is as a clear direction for moving forward. Does that make sense?
I hear you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I appreciate the time.
Good evening. My name is Laura Arnold. I'm the president of the Jeremy Ranch Owners Association, representing 629 homes in Jeremy Ranch tonight. I would like to thank the commission for having this public hearing, and also thank Pat Putt and his team for their efforts in taking the time to explain the proposed Snyderville general plan to the community on several occasions. Tonight, I would like to highlight one aspect of the plan. In regards to the land maps, and specifically to the new mixed-use receiving title being assigned to many of the last undeveloped parcels in the basin. If used, this title could mean the zoning could be changed. Along with this issue, the Jeremy Ranch homeowners are specifically concerned about 11.75 acres in lot SS3F on the corner of Rasmussen and Homestead Roads. Jeremy Ranch is home to over 2,000 residents who have chosen this neighborhood for many reasons, including how it was developed and both its proximity to and also its distance from Park City proper and Kimball Junction. Jeremy Ranch is a quiet community with the residents taking advantage of many recreational activities, including hiking trails, bike paths, golf, and cross-country skiing. The Jeremy Golf and Country Club and the 620 acres of open space were a big attraction to all of us in our decision-making process to make Jeremy Ranch our home. Jeremy Ranch, since its conception, was never designed nor intended to house a significant commercial presence beyond which already exists with Quarry Village, Tollgate, and the current last piece of land designated for 66,000 square feet of density. This is lot SS3F. Yes, we are all aware of the last parcel in our neighborhood to be developed, and of the agreement reached by the county in 2005 that this 11.75 acres would yield a maximum density of 66,000 square feet. With the new general plan that is being presented, our way of life is being threatened. By using the term mixed-use receiving area, we cannot be assured of what will happen to this lot. Could density be added to the agreed amount? Yes, it could. If this title is allowed to be used, it is patently unfair to the residents of Summit County and specifically Jeremy Ranch, who have made investments, purchased their homes, and made lifestyle decisions for themselves and their families based on the county's plans already in place. The term receiving area seems to be an easy out for the county to not make a final decision on a piece of land. There must be a process for land use decisions that respect existing agreements and deeply include affected residents' desires before ever being modified. Once the plan has been solidified, no changes should be able to take place. How can an individual or a family make what could be their largest single investment without this confirmation from their public officials? In the case of Jeremy Ranch, this process did occur in 2005 with litigation and an agreement that 66,000 square feet was the desired square footage density for this piece of property. As homeowners and voters in Summit County, we, the residents of Jeremy Ranch, need to be assured by the commission and the council that the county will not let this title of receiving area be applied to these 11.75 acres of land as currently being proposed by the new general plan. We are deeply committed to preserving the balance and the quality of life of our wonderful community, good thing I can see, and hope you will help us to do this. In closing, I would like to quote the general plan, which describes future development in Jeremy Ranch and Pine Brook, and I quote, "Any future development should be compatible with the existing environment, including the preservation of open space, vegetation, and wildlife habitat." What we see possibly occurring here with the term mixed use receiving for parcels of Jeremy Ranch and also in Pine Brook are inconsistent with this statement in the proposed general plan. At this time, I would like to ask all the residents of Jeremy Ranch who are here tonight and agree with my comments to stand and be recognized.
The majority of you here from Jeremy, thank you. I just have a few questions for you, Laura, just so we understand what you're trying to say. So your preamble was great, and you said that included your trails, golf, skiing. Mike lives in the neighborhood. I live across the street from you guys. So we're there. Question though is currently that land is for 66,000 square feet. There's nothing on the table. They would have to go through a county council process to get it increased.
We understand.
Right. Just regurgitating information for others.
Okay.
Yes, it is right now on a land use map. You can see the little orange, yellow portion at the very top. That's that 66,000 square feet. That the county's planning staff has designated as a possible receiving area. What I want to do just real quick so that we understand what that means is I'm going to send it over to Pat real quick so he can explain why. Because the color it is currently right now. And we can move forward.
Also turn it over to me. Well, I'd be happy to explain this whole concept of the mixed receiving areas and why they're showing up in the maps in the locations that they are. As we began to develop this plan, one of our tasks we felt was to see if we could explore as many ways possible, emphasis on possible, that we could use to direct growth to the area that in the end all of us thought was the most suitable area for that. What was the strategy going to be if we were to not fill in the remaining open lands with a lower density, more sprawling development? Is there an opportunity other than just downzoning property? Is there a way to create or at least maintain value and move those development rights to some other location? So when we developed these maps, we figured we needed some at least initial broad measures. Where would these areas go? We really broke those down to two with maybe a smaller third subset. The first was the existing commercially, predominantly commercial neighborhoods within the basin. So where were those? It was the Kimball Junction area. When I say Kimball Junction, I'm talking both sides of SR 224. The Kimball Junction area, the lower portions of Silver Creek near the interchange of I-80 and US 40, where we have already existing commercially zoned areas. The other area that met that standard was the areas in Silver Summit west of US 40. the areas that we know are trying to sort of Home Depot is, those commercially developed areas. The reason we picked those as the place to begin the discussion is we already had existing infrastructure, streets, water, sewer. Not saying that those, particularly those streets were ideal at this point, not that they weren't without problem, that we already had investment, capital investment in those areas in terms of infrastructure. So that was the first cut, and you'll see those on the map. The other criteria that we used to put on the map to begin the dance, the discussion, was areas that were already approved but unbuilt at this point, and approved for either straight out commercial or a mix of commercial office type uses. The theory behind that being, if we have another opportunity to possibly rethink it, if we have another opportunity to redo it, if there's a way that those can be done using some of those SMART principles, maybe we should take a look at those areas as well. And there's a number of those that have shown up. The area in Pine Brook and Jeremy met that criteria. The other, what I was referring to as a smaller subset, were there areas proximate to major corridor interchanges that in the right set of circumstances at those intersections could be developed in a compact form, in a compact way. My understanding, you will use the term nodal, but it was tight, clustered areas of development in key areas that are easily accessible by a road system and a trail system. We figured those three criteria, let's map those, illustrate them, and begin the discussion on those. So those are the criteria that we used. Again, the idea behind that wasn't to specifically say in one of these receiving areas, it was an open check to be able to move density. It was simply the beginning of an exercise. If in trade-off for something like open space, recreation, trails, water resources, historic preservation, wildlife corridors, if those are valuable to us, is there a way to take some of that and move it somewhere else? Is there a place to take all of that and move it to another area in order to achieve those other community objectives? That was the nature, that was sort of the thinking behind the receiving zones.
Thanks, Ben.
More comments?
Well,
One last point on that, and that's why I've got the best people to the right of me. That was reminding me. When you see the land use maps that have been created for those 16 neighborhoods, you need to emphasize those are not zoning maps. Those are meant to illustrate if we had to make a drawing of where we were going to organize ourselves and our land uses and our activities into the next 20 to 25 years, what would be the predominant, what would be the overriding activity in those areas? That's what they're meant to illustrate. They're not a zoning map. If in the future, as we move through this discussion with the Planning Commission and ultimately the County Council, before any one of those could be established as an area to be considered for more, one of the first things that would have to happen is there would need to be an ordinance created that not only describes how that density may be moved around, but specifically where we would consider it, and we would have to map that. So it's not to kick the can down the road, it's just to help you all understand the progression of what would need to happen in order for this particular strategy to be used. In the end, when the discussion is over and the recommendations and the decisions made, the commission and the council may elect to move in another direction and ask us to come up with some additional ways of achieving some of these ends. We don't know. Again, we're looking for your feedback.
Okay, so, but I want to pull us back out from a neighborhood level, which we're on now. I want to pull us back up to like a 10,000 foot view of the basin. Well, just let me get to a point, okay? Just to summarize a little bit what Pat was saying about why this is a mixed use. Stop, please. It's going to have to, it's not a discussion, it's, you have your turn at the podium, so please just be respectful. It's a bit civil with this. So, if you pull up to a 10,000 foot viewpoint here, what we hear, what the staff hears is that one of the most important things for citizens that live in the basin is open space. So if we look at the priorities of the basin and go top down, as we've seen and we've heard from the citizens of the basin, if you're able to take density from a plot of land that has current density on it and move it somewhere else to save a space that might get built on that doesn't have your name on it now. The question for you is, are you willing to sacrifice the 66,000 square feet to save open space somewhere else in the basin? And that's why it's up as a receiving area. That's the point. Well, and then just a second. The next thing is, I'm just playing both sides of the coin here, because I think it's important to hear. There's a lot of people here from Jeremy, which is great, and we appreciate it. The next question I have for you, Laura, is you listed off a lot of things at the start that are amenities of Jeremy Ranch and a lot of our neighborhoods. Help me understand how that putting more density in that spot will take that away.
Well, I think there's a lot of my board members here to speak on. We broke down different angles of that thing. But I would like to reach out to the bigger picture. I don't think there should be a title on any piece of property that is so vague as what's being placed on many of them in the county. I think you should decide how much should be open space and how much should have density on it. How can you make a decision to live anywhere if you do not know what's going to go there?
Well, a lot of the the reality of it is a lot of the open space that you see now is not open space. It's got development rights on it.
I understand that, but I would
So
like
we're trying to help that process along. We're trying to fix a lot of the issues of the past. And there's not a lot of solutions. We're working on it.
Well, I understand that. I just think that the plan should decide. I think we should have a plan. Take all these yellow spots and decide what it's going to be. And decide what it's going to be. I think this uncertainty that hangs over you, not knowing what's going to go in that space or not going in that space, is very disconcerting. So,
Understood.
all right.
Okay, thank you, Laura.
Friends, neighbors, commissioners,
Will you introduce yourself to us first?
Sorry?
Introduce yourself to us first.
My name
for
is
the
Sarah
record.
Wood. I live in Highland Estates. I claim to represent nobody except myself. I am a working class person, that rare endangered breed. I would like to point out, first of all, there is a factual error.
Could I ask you to speak into the microphone?
There is a factual error in the map of Highland Estates. What is marked as preserved open space in the bottom of the map is in fact owned by a company in Washington State and therefore is potentially developable.
Well, Sarah.
I promise these guys like
I know, but let me just explain again on the maps. These are not zoning maps; they're conceptual maps. So a lot of the colors you see are, it's just these are just broad concepts. The lines are fuzzy. The lines are not.
Okay, but the
That's-
words preserved open space are fairly clear in the sense that it indicates that it's a done deal and it's not preserved open space. It is owned by someone, but it's owned by a private company. Okay, I have a couple of issues to bring up and then I need to run because as I said, I'm working class and I have a very early start tomorrow. First of all, from Ms. Al Garagar in Jeremy Ranch, number 2 on page 1, discourage low density, large lot dispersed development. Well, that describes Highland Estates. So why are you trying to discourage that? That's her question, not mine, and I'd just like to make my other points and then I'll let you address whatever you like. The obvious one for people who live where I do is traffic. When the Silver Creek Village development goes in, the frontage road that you have to take from Kimball Junction, both sides of it, Highland Drive and Bittner Road, is already insufferable when you get off at Kimball Junction. And if to avoid that traffic having to sit through 5 changes of lights at 2 separate lights, if you go around up to Highway 40 and then get off at exit 2, it's also insufferable. I don't know what you're planning to do to mitigate the traffic problems when Silver Creek Village goes in. I missed the first part of the meeting, so maybe you have already addressed a major concern for all residents in Highland Estates and which should be a concern for all residents in Summit County, which is water. We have a water co-op and the rates, if you exceed your smallish allotment per month, are simply punitive. I'm Australian, as you can all hear, and I have lived through our own very conservative Prime Minister of 15 years ago referring to what was being called a drought as, we're terribly sorry, but this is just what the weather is now and we all have to get used to it. The last 3 winters have been very spotty in terms of the water supply because it comes from snowmelt. We're all excited now because we've just had a really big dump, but there's no guarantee that winters are going to continue to provide the groundwater that supplies all of Summit County. And I don't know what your plans are. I asked at the open house, what is plan B if the snows continue to fail? It was never believed in Australia that the rains would fail for 40 years in a row, but they did. So I'd like to know what plan B is to supply water to all of the new communities that are going in. That's it. Traffic and water. I'm not a NIMBY. I think affordable housing is good. I needed to move into Highland Estates because it was that or Summit Park, as it is for most working class people here. So I just want you to consider those points if you would be so kind with your praise.
Right,
Thank you.
thanks, Ms. Wood. Yes, sir.
My name is Norm Schwartz. I'm actually a real estate investor, developer, and most of my development has been done in the state of Florida. If anybody's been in Florida recently as compared to maybe 30 or 40 years ago, we've paved over everything, everything except maybe the Everglades, and now they're trying to clean up the Everglades. But I think that a lot of us are here because of the proposed development that or the proposed changes in the development at Jeremy Ranch. And I think that's kind of turned on the light bulb for me and a lot of other people about the entire concept of how development really is done in this area and in Summit County. And I think that the proposed development really is a poster child for some of the changes that are proposed. Basically, for anybody who doesn't know, the parcel that was mentioned earlier by the president of the Jeremy Ranch Association is currently land use for 66,000 square feet. And that actual designation of the development rights are as a result of litigation, and it was a litigation settlement. The developer has now requested preliminary approvals for 215,000 square feet of mixed use to be constructed on this site. It seems to be routine for developers to buy or option a piece of property and then try to get approvals for much greater density, then settle with the county after threatening litigation or for a compromise of some sort of an interest. This is a cancerous process that developers have been apparently successful with, and it needs to be stopped now. It is not the case in any other municipality or county that I've ever done business in.
Mr. Schwartz, let me just bring it back. So that's really what we're trying to do, is we're trying to redo this general plan so that we can rework the development code, so hopefully we can get out a lot of these errors that we've had. And fix a lot of the problems that we've had in the past.
Okay, and I appreciate that. And I sincerely appreciate the fact that you all serve without any pay, you give of your time, and I think it's wonderful. But I think that that we're going in the wrong direction. And if I can continue.
Well, can you bring it back to something about the general plan that will help us? What are we missing in the general plan that's not there right now that we can add or we can change?
I'm not familiar enough with the general plan to know what necessarily can be added, but I am familiar enough with the proposals that are out there, including the TDRs, which I'd like to get into.
That's appropriate. Go ahead.
Okay, so let me go through this. In this case, the county is discussing the idea of allowing developers to use transferable development rights, so they can legally move density from a different site or area of the county to one where there is perhaps more economic demand, and of course, more profit for the smart developer. I'm opposed to the enactment of a TDR regulation, as I do not believe it's in the best interest of Summit County residents. In this case, the process requires both a sending and receiving site, and the county is considering Jeremy Ranch and Pine Brook, and I've recently realized, and Kimball Junction as potential receiving sites. I'm absolutely opposed to Pine Brook and Jeremy being designated as those sites. The residents are painfully aware of the crowded commuter parking lot, the traffic congestion at peak hours at Jeremy Ranch School and at rush hours. The exit ramp from I-80 is backed up quite often to I-80 itself. As property owners, we relied on the character of our neighborhood to remain essentially what it was on the dates of our purchase, and relied on our government officials to support the 2,000 plus homeowners in these areas in maintaining the character and density of our respective neighborhoods. I'm told that if the county does not vote to have Jeremy Ranch and Pine Brook designated as receiving sites, the developer has no basis to increase his density. It is essential that the residents, homeowners, and associations send a loud, clear message to all county officials and planners that they represent us, and we do not want to be designated as receiving sites for TDRs. As residents and individual homeowners, there is a clear opportunity to stop this project and others that may be proposed in the future from negatively impacting our neighborhoods. We need to stand up for our rights and have our voices heard. As a matter of fact, I went on to do some more research on the way over here with a friend of mine who is a developer. And what many of you may not realize is currently Quarry Village is built out to 69,000 square feet, which is what would be allowed on the Jeremy Ranch parcel. Personally, I think that's an overdevelopment. And this developer is now going ahead and proposing to put triple of Quarry Village on that site. Any law that could allow that, I don't care how much open land.
All right, let me slow you down a little bit. So I just want to, so we can move forward a little bit. I just want to look at the group here, and if I get a show of hands on who's opposed to Jeremy Ranch as a receiving area.
Can you define receiving area?
We did.
May I?
So the majority of you here are for the issue with the coloring of the map, that it shouldn't be a receiving area, and I hear you. We hear you. Okay, so.
So you don't want to hear us?
No, I'm not saying I don't want to hear you, but I just don't want you to have to come up here and repeat. I think it's really redundant for everybody. We have an idea that most of you are here for the parcel at Jeremy, that it should not be a receiving area. And I hear that, the commission hears it, staff hears it.
Well, what are you gonna do?
We do what we do, and what we do is we go back, staff goes back, takes your comments, looks at everything that's going on in the county, and decides on the next round, but see, we'll take your comments, and there'll be another draft that comes out before the next hearing, which is scheduled for the next meeting in January. And that's, at that point, based on staff comments here, it may change. I can't tell you tonight what the decision is. We're not making decisions tonight, we're taking input. And I'm trying to make this as best I can a discussion so that everybody feels heard, so that everybody feels that they're getting something out of this meeting, so that we're not just up here taking notes and not giving any feedback. I think it's important that you feel heard and that you came here tonight to give us the feedback, and it's important that we understand that we hear you. So what we do is we're not making a decision tonight. We're not telling you tonight what's happening. Then the next meeting, that's probably what will happen. And staff will then take the information, recompile it, right? That's the process. Yes,
May
sir.
I continue, Colin? Okay. As a developer, I was originally thinking that the idea of doing transferable development rights was a reasonable idea. I've given great consideration to the concept of Summit County adopting a TDR development right law. The concept of not allowing additional aggregate development until certain thresholds are met in the county is practical and well thought out. We have a master plan. The concept of TDRs suggests to me that developers are going to seize the opportunity to transfer TDRs to areas that are more financially profitable and already highly developed, like Jeremy and Pinebrook and Kimball Junction. Those areas already experience significant traffic gridlock and would suffer irreparable harm if these areas are utilized as receiving sites. I have great respect for the county administration and very competent planners, but I do not trust in the future and their successors. It was estimated that over 70% of the projects approved in Summit County were as a result of litigation and settlement. Laws that have discretion breed litigation. The concept of TDRs opens the door once again for developers to attempt to justify greater density or exceptions to previous development orders. I have sat at county commission meetings and watched elected officials give so many reasons for voting in a certain way that a crafty attorney can always come back to threaten litigation. It's like watching a deposition as the attorney wished his client would just stop talking. I saw it with the recent Discovery Project meetings. I think the process is cancerous and needs to be stopped now.
Okay, Mr. Schwartz, I'm gonna stop you there. So that so I hear you that you're not a fan of TDRs, and I just want to.
Well, if you can give me one more minute, I'm done, and then, okay? But based on the governmental track record of 70% project approval by litigation settlement, I don't trust officials not to continue this process at residents' expense. Why would a reasonable person trust that the TDR process will not be?
Let me just, so we've heard you, and I just want to make the point that there's no current TDR plan. This is a cloud, a bubble that's possible down the road in the general plan, as written right now, would give us the ability to possibly explore that, to explore some sending and receiving process. And it hasn't been, there's nothing ironed out, there's no finite rules, there's nothing so I think that a lot of people are scared of PDR right now because there's really nothing that the county has spelled out on exactly how it would work. So what the general plan does, again, is it's an advisory document that gives us the ability later on down the road to put things into place possibly. And that's what we need, is we need the language in the document to give us the ability down the road to possibly do something. And that's why the language is in there as it is. It's not specific. There's no finite rules. There's no code. There's no nothing. It opens us up to the possibility of doing something down the road, and that's it.
Respectfully, I think it must be a lot farther along than you're letting on if we're looking at it all mapped out.
I don't want to make this a debate, Commissioner Schwartz, but again, the general plan is an advisory document that gets us to a place down the road where we can do things. It's a very ethereal document that is required by the state that gives you an idea as a citizen or someone coming in what our community is about, what we want to do, what our characteristics are, what we like to preserve and protect, and what our goals are for our county, or our area of the county. And that's it, and that's what we're trying to do here, is create a document that gets us there. So I'm gonna ask.
And moving density to congested areas is part of what your document is. And I am absolutely opposed to it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
My name is Jack Carmel.
Can you say it again? I didn't catch it.
Jack Carmel.
Jack Carmel, thank you, Jack.
With a K. I live in Jeremy Ranch for about 20 some odd years, and I've used the same road going down from Suckett to the corner to the plus where the store is. And each time I find in the morning,
I don't think people can hear you that well.
and each time I find that I have to sit by the light a little bit longer. So I said to myself, I'll get up a little earlier. Instead of leaving at 8 o'clock, I'll leave at 10 to 8. So the following morning I went over there at 10 to 8, and instead of being car number 25, I was car number 48. So apparently some other smart neighbors of mine had the same idea. So now when I leave the house, there's no room to get out of my own house because everybody's waiting there to get out. So I decided to attack it from a different direction. And I called the fire department. And I requested to have an appointment with the chief of the fire department. And I spoke to him for about 1 hour. Very nice man. And we understood each other, I believe. And I brought to him the idea that if there was a fire and all of us wanted to leave earlier, the fire would have very little to kill because we're going to do it to ourselves. There will be no room out. And you know it, and there's no way to avoid it. I think that the gentleman with the 66,000 square feet has an opportunity now to get up and give it all to us and take a tax loss. There is no room to develop anything anymore over there. Already, we are up to the gills. If you try at a certain hour to go under Route 80, make a left turn, and try to go to Kimball, you think that someone's going to let you make a left turn? These 3 stop signs on the other side releasing a car a minute. And if the car sees you, he speeds up instead of letting you go. These are our neighbors. Then you get to, and I want to mention something additional. The winters have been very, very light, very light. I have been stuck on Route 80, some 200 yards off of the exit of the ramp, in the middle of Route 80, with very, very low visibility, with some morons, excuse me for saying that, coming at 80 miles an hour from the other side, and I'm sitting there in my car, and I know that my car is going to explode from behind because I can't see me. Are you considering all of this? You want to give us another 66,000 garbage cans, I don't know, whatever it is that comes with humanity in there? You want to give us more service people, cleaning people? I think at some point, instead of progress, what we're looking here is we're going backwards in a hurry. And let's talk about water just for a minute. Supposing our area has 1 glass of water and we have 20 people, each gets an inch. And then we have 40 people, each gets half an inch. And then we have 100 people, and then we have a war. That's what we're going to have here. I thank you.
All right, thank you. So, again, I want to bring you back, I want to refocus us again. We hear you on the Jeremy Ranch mixed-use area. We hear that, I saw your hands. So we know as commission and staff that the majority of you are here to oppose it becoming a receiving area. So
If you hear it, what are you going to do?
I just told you that we're taking comments. So what I'm trying to say is I would appreciate that if we could please get comments that, I'm not just counting your comments, I see you out there, we heard you, I saw your hands, we know the force that's out here for it not being a receiving zone. What we need, what I'd like to refocus is on tonight right now, is if we could get comment about the general plan, the way it's written, what is missing, what is right, what is wrong. That's what we need and will help us. So that is welcome.
Absolutely. My name is Catherine Eden. I would like to thank the council for all of their volunteer time. They must love living here as much as we do, at least to put this much effort into all of this. And I would like to thank the county staff as well for taking an intelligent approach as best they can to try and remedy some of the problems in the past, and to take the time to listen to the community and hear what they're saying. I actually have a similar subject, but somewhat separate. One of the things that you asked from us staff was to tell us a little bit about what brought us here, what keeps us here, and what makes us want to remain. I heard both from you that you hear from the county, the constituents, that open space, the lifestyle that we live. I heard it from the Jeremy Ranch constituent, that this is a place of active people who enjoy this mountain community that isn't Salt Lake, that isn't suburban. And that's what I keep hearing. So I'd like to share that that's also why I live here. I don't actually live in Jeremy Ranch, I live nearby. And as I drove down my own dirt roads, wearing the hat of my neighborhood, I was happy to see the 5-year-olds that I know who live right next to us playing in the snow, digging a snow cave, that I felt very safe, that on those roads there wasn't anyone speeding, and I didn't feel that they were dangerous at all. So I hope in that when you move forward with these neighborhood plans, some of the things I noticed about roads and character and so forth, that the communities themselves are included, because clearly individual small communities can become overwhelmed in meetings like this where they may not know what's being addressed. So this general plan, I hope, addresses each community separately when they move forward with those changes. And then stepping back to a larger 10,000 view as you requested earlier, I'd like to talk a little bit about open space in not just my neighborhood, but my county, because I think that is a huge part of what draws all of us here. And I have to admit, I'm concerned with the language in this general plan, and I'm concerned with what's outlined here. We just passed a $15 million bond that was geared for open space. And the previous definition of open space, I think if you produced a survey of all the people who live here, if you turn to page 11 on the general plan, it looks like picture number 1. At least it's on 11 for my copy. I don't know what your copy looks like, but it's the one with pictures. I think what you would see when you talk to people and really survey them, that they would say that this is open space and this is what they had prioritized. Now, I understand what was the quote? That we are often separated by a common language. And I think that that's what's so important in moving forward in this ethereal document, is that that language needs to be very specific about certain public desires. And I think this one lacks that with open space, because it gives a great deal of wiggle room to great different types of open space. And that wasn't the previous understanding of the county, my opinion. But I think if you took a survey, it would probably be supported.
So help us get there. If you could email the county staff, Pat, and let us know what's wrong with the language so that we can.
Absolutely.
That's
And I would
the
be
helpful
absolutely
part.
happy to do that. And when I did that, let me just pull out my phone. I should say, I was pretty happy to see the 5-year-olds, because I'm also a mother of a 3 and 5-year-old, and I meant to introduce myself as such as well. So I value parks, but it's not why I live here. I think it's interesting that if you look at the language in Salt Lake City's open space language in their documents, it is much more conservative and talks about the natural state conservation easement type of pristine, what you're calling pristine open space. And what worries me is with this, our open space, instead of being under easement, I have to admit, I went to a lot of these meetings pregnant, and I've dropped off the map a little bit because I have kids. And where was I going with that? Forgive me.
Pristine versus park.
You have all changed. You're different people. You're not the same staff that were here 5, 6 years ago. And you're not the same council. And you're not saying the same things that they said 5 or 6 years ago. So I really think that those bonds, those agreements between us, really for open space, need to be locked tight. Kind of like a prenuptial agreement. We agree to get married, but when it all falls apart and you all are different people, what's the bottom line? Who gets what? What can be built here? What can this be done? And that's
So
what an
let me
easement
just
does.
slow you down a little, Catherine. So that is, again, this is the advisory document that gets us the language, and then the code is where it gets to.
Absolutely, but this advisory document is less forceful about open space in our entire county. And I did hear you even tell, I'm sorry, I forgot her name, the well-spoken woman right now, Laura, that what we were getting in trade for the higher density was what we value most, open space. But what my concern is you're not really trading lock-tight open space. You're trading me 4 options.
Personally, I'm not doing anything, but.
No, I mean, not
No,
you,
I'm just.
but I mean this document.
This is what the helpful thing would be, if you could pull out the specifics.
Absolutely.
And then send it to Pat, Peter, Jennifer, whomever you find in the email, and then that's where it helps us.
And have I, you understood what I mean, that this is not, okay. Is there anything else
No,
I
I
can
get it.
clarify for you? Because I appreciate your time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Like many in the county, I wear 2 hats, so I have to do 2 separate comments here.
So introduce yourself to us. Did
Aaron
you sign
Bragg.
in?
Yeah, I will.
Again, sorry.
Aaron Bragg, and my first comment I will give on behalf of the Summit Land Conservancy's Conservation Director. Just a written statement for you. Summit Land Conservancy has long recognized the importance of our community's open spaces. Since 2002, our mission has directed us to protect Summit County's remaining agricultural lands, view sheds, animal habitats, waterways, and rangelands. So we are thankful for all the work the commission and the county staff have put in thus far, undertaken to amend the general plan's chapter 3, which regulates open space. But we are concerned by the category of pristine open space. Pristine open space has undisturbed natural environment as the priority. It allows single track connection trails and lift Swanner as an example. We would suggest that a more appropriately descriptive term would be conservation lands instead of pristine open space to better define these types of lands, because truly pristine natural areas are extremely rare. And just a question to pose would be, does the Basin or County own any lands that would be qualified as pristine open space, and do you believe there is any of this type of land left within the basin? And then if so, what is the mechanism for funding the purchase of this type of land? The bond language used in Proposition 1 that passed with flying colors on November 4th promoted acquiring recreational open space. So does that exclude using those funds to purchase pristine open space? Because it is not intended as recreational open space based on the definitions currently.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that gets out of our wheelhouse a lot, so.
Okay, that's fine.
So that's a basin rec law, and then, we have nothing to do with the money side.
Right, okay. Then we would hope that BOSAC would continue to have the option to work with willing landowners, depending on whatever it is they would like to do. And, let me see.
So what we can do
That's fine. Yeah, let
on
me
those
switch.
comments is,
Yeah.
I really love the information on helping pristine. We fought, I remember a year ago, I think we had that chapter before us, and we really debated that,
Right.
and it's really good to hear the feedback on it.
And then additionally, we are encouraged by and fully support many of the objectives and policies laid out in the staff report that just came out in the draft Basin General Plan, particularly the following three. One, the staff report highlighted general public comments regarding open space and that all open space should be under an easement. We would suggest adding some clarification that an easement must be a conservation easement and held by a qualified land trust, not an organization created solely for the purpose of holding open space portion of a development agreement. A conservation easement provides the most permanent protection for open space. Two, policy 3.3, which states management plans and regular maintenance should be implied or implemented to ensure that the land's conservation values are maintained. As a practice, when we receive federal funding for a property, a management plan is required before the easement can be closed. The landowner works with experts in the field to create and follow those management plans, so we understand how important those are. And policy 3.9, which says the county should accept cash in lieu of open space where such funds can be more appropriately used to purchase development rights or open space at a more appropriate or significant location. This could be a really good policy. We just caution that the amount of funds being accepted be based on actual prices paid for open space in our community so that the intentions of the policy can actually be achieved. Because no one is making new land, and thanks for your efforts on protecting open space.
I see you in that.
Now I
No, I was going to ask you if you could give those to your written notes to the staff so they have.
Yeah, and I've been emailing them to you. And then I am also the treasurer of the Summit County Public Arts Advisory Board. And we have been working closely with the county staff and community residents and business owners in the Kimball Junction Basin area to marry public art with the community goals. We envision public art as a crucial element to recreating the basin and the heart and feel of it. We want it to be more than just a piece here or a piece there. So instead of adding art to wayfinding, our goal is to use public art to accomplish wayfinding, the way that a lot of it happened during the 2002 Olympic Games and the colors and things like that that they use. Right now, policy 5.5, art and economic development, says it allows for opportunity for the arts and artists to participate in the visual enhancement of the basin. I think that's a good starting place, but I know this isn't the place for huge teeth, but could get a little bit more specific in that. And the importance of dedicating 1% of capital projects to public art would be a crucial element to accomplishing these goals. Park City has 1% for art. We also have examples from Loveland, Colorado, Seattle, San Jose with exemplary 1% capital improvement public art ordinances. So public art should be an essential element to any community plan and not just an offspring. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Ms. Bragg. Oh.
Hi there. First of all, thanks for your service and your staff's time, taking time to meet with us and fully explain different options and things that were going to be presented to the commission. We appreciate that. My name is Dan Bass. I am president of Jeremy Point Homeowners Association. Obviously, I live in Jeremy Point. I agree with everything Laura has said earlier and the speakers directly relating to the development and potential development of that area. But what I would like to do, I didn't prepare notes, so to speak. What I would like to do is have you consider the fact, is growth good? You know, all of us drive here, all of us live here. We've all been caught in the traffic of a week and a half ago where it took basically an hour and 45 minutes to get from Park Avenue to Kimball Junction or beyond. Where is this going? I think I'd like the commission to take a look at where are we going to sustain this growth? If we stack it on top, where's it going to go? It's still going to go on our roads. They're still going to use our water. As Jack was saying earlier, they're still going to be by the four-way stop signs trying to get out of Jeremy Ranch and other outlets all over the county. So maybe if you can think outside the box and think, is this really something that we want to see in our county? I know municipal governments, county governments, and frequently state governments want additional tax revenue. And it comes from growth. But with growth comes a diminution of the life that we want here. You put more rats in a bowl, and you get more rats biting each other's behind. You know, if you have two rats in a big fish bowl, they can live peacefully, and they do. You put 5 rats in there, maybe they do the same thing. You start dropping 100 rats in there, and they're clamoring on each other's heads. So maybe consider the bigger picture of why do we want growth other than for additional income? People want to live here? Okay. See where you can live. See what you can
For a
find.
second, because I wanted to see if Peter could jump in on this. Well, you know, can you help with what we're trying to do?
It's an interesting, it's more of a philosophical point. Is growth good?
That's exactly the question. Is it good? And who does it benefit?
I think that really depends on whether or not if we want increased level of services, if we want different options available just to change our lifestyle. Some people think no growth, open space, no neighbours is their idealized life. Other people would look to services that are available locally that they don't have to travel far and wide to receive. They would consider it perhaps good. One of the dilemmas we face is that we actually do have predictions of growth. It's not a prediction we can ignore. It's a prediction that may or not come true depending on how it actually builds out, how it changes, how it affects our quality of life. We can't ignore the fact that growth may happen. If growth does happen, then how do we manage it in an appropriate way? How do we minimize the impacts? How do we maximize the value of our existing infrastructure and resources? How do we make sure that we don't overstrain? How do we make sure we don't fail? With the example you talked of the traffic problem, that would be a failure of an existing infrastructure. Could we have predicted that? Perhaps. Could there be alternative solutions? That's why we're here. I can't answer the question for other people, is growth good? I know that I've lived miles and miles off road. I currently live right next to the courthouse in Colville. My commute's 2 minutes walk. So traffic impacts me a lot less than it impacts somebody who has to drive to and from a different location. We have to study all of these things. We have to study people's lives. That's why we're asking you, what services do you require? What do you value about your life? What do you hope to achieve in your life? If you enjoy, if the bachelor enjoys the lifestyle, living in a high-rise apartment above the bar, goes downstairs.
They don't live in Park City.
It's not a problem. If you are a young family, maybe you have a different housing option available to you. As soon as you have a child, and maybe the school run suddenly becomes an issue. The traffic involved in the school run becomes an issue. While you're dropping the child at school, you can go to the grocery store and carry out those services. Do we want people to travel far and wide for those services? Can we accommodate some of those locally? It's not a cut and dry question, is growth good? I'm not capable of answering that question for anybody else. I'm going to say growth is likely to occur. How we manage and direct it and appropriately use our resources is what we're trying to do here.
And I do appreciate that, and I understand that's exactly what the goal perhaps is of the general plan. But as part of that big picture, we need to take a look at, are we encouraging growth? Are we rezoning areas so that more people can become compacted and a more densely compacted area? Or, you know, I'm happy living on a little 2/3 of an acre. There are people who live on 20 and 30 acres who wouldn't have it any other way. And you, if you can walk to the courthouse in Colville, that suits your lifestyle. And you're right, it is a balancing act. But I'd like you to take a look at the big picture of, is it good? Is it good for the county? Is it good for the
refocus you a little
residents?
bit. So let me refocus you.
Yep.
So in this document that we're working on tonight, where do we address your comments of, is growth good? Or should we stop growth? Or I'm really having a difficult time.
Look, I can
parsing
just
your
speak for
comments.
myself. Look, transferable development rights, I don't think are a good thing. Somebody might have a parcel of land in the middle of nowhere that they have development rights from 20, 30 years ago that now they can transfer to somebody else and then get it out of that area and hence make the area they transfer it into more dense, more compact, more crowded. So I don't think that's a good thing. And maybe they should look
that's what we need,
at as
is-
eliminate them.
The bullet point, no TDRs from you. So then, is there anything else, a bullet point you can give me that helps us with this, with the comments in the document?
Take a look at, do we want to encourage growth at all?
Okay, thanks.
Hi, I'm Kathy Becker. I live in Kimball Junction. I used to be the HR president for Fox Point, so became quite involved in our neighborhood activities. I'm no longer on the board, but I'm pretty familiar with what our owners are, and we do have some board members here tonight. And I also want to thank the county staff who will be attending our HOA meeting tomorrow. So commissioners are invited also, if you'd like, and not that you have more spare time, but you're welcome to come over to Swanner and hear our concerns if anyone's available tomorrow at 7. We meet at the Swanner Nature Center. So it's our quarterly board meeting, a staff member will be on board, on the agenda. I think that what has been shared by Laura and in terms of how much is too much for Jeremy Ranch, it isn't that I think Jeremy Ranch thinks then therefore, you know, all of those folks should head over to Kimball Junction or across the road to Home Depot. I think we use each other's neighborhoods. We don't just connect, we actually use them. We go to the movies. Jeremy Ranch comes and goes to the movies in our neighborhood. We go and cycle there. So I think it's really important to think about I'll be very specific, when they say that your purpose phase 2 is to create high quality livable neighborhoods. I live and chose to live in a high quality livable neighborhood. This plan destroys that. For me, it destroys some of the amenities I think we move to be next to, and that's a usable trail system, not just a walking path.
Right, let me stop you. So what specifically in the plan destroys your neighborhood?
Because if you look at, I mean, when we create trails, it's not just for pedestrians to get to work. It's to cycle and to ski on those neighborhoods. So when I lived in Seattle, I chose to live in the neighborhood of 100,000 people. But when we would access a trail, it would have a bike area, it would have a walking area, it would be divided so it could handle those thousands of people. We have a very small little trail that's right between a fence and Swanner and literally almost in the kitchen of New Park and Fox Point. Probably shouldn't have been platted right next to that little path, but we use that. We actually go out our door and ski. We go out our door and cycle. The whole community uses that path for events starting all the time. I mean, just non-stop events happen. So when you pump tens of thousands of more people right into that area that's going to access that same trail, you pretty much change the fabric of that trail in a big way in terms of its usability. So I think that's how much is too much. It isn't that we are trying to, when we say emphasize infill development and create better connections between neighborhoods, that's not at the cost of creating quality neighborhoods. So it's sort of a, we want in those dense neighborhoods, you need to think about them in a manner that still gives us the same access to the kind of amenities we were all in search of when we moved there, which wasn't just looking at open space, but recreating. You know,
So
right
let me
on
bring it
the
back to something that Mike's earlier. So
Yeah.
infill in your area would destroy your trolleys and destroy your movability, walkability is what I'm hearing.
Because we can't redevelop those trails. We're not gonna make double-decker trails. We can't redevelop, we don't have any setback zones from where you plotted our original buildings. So I would say, we're stuck in some of those sections. And I think the other thing with that is along with that is transportation. We have two outlets. It's the same issue with Jeremy Ranch. You're not going to solve everything with transit. People live in Kimball Junction and also Jeremy because they commute to Salt Lake. And I used to be on the transportation committees in Seattle when I lived there for many years, and I was in philanthropy where we funded smart growth development for the whole Northwest region. The idea of how much transit you need and how many times people are willing to switch from a car to a bus to a light rail to a bike. There's about two. They'll go from one to another, but they won't keep going. So we can't fix that whole transportation plan with so much commute that's going to happen and is going to increasingly happen down to Salt Lake City. So we're just caught. The data is pretty clear on that. We're going to be stuck by that. So it's just because Salt Lake is sprawled, we can't fix that. So our commuters are going to head there. They're going to be in a car because they don't all end up at the Boeing company like Seattle has, or Microsoft. So we did a lot of work when I was working in Seattle to channel them to those high compact areas. The university, we can do that, but very few other areas in Salt Lake we can't. So that's a flaw within the concept of how we're going to get in and out of our neighborhoods. And I think currently, nobody wonders that we have a major problem entering and exiting from I-80 and 224 in and out of Park City and in and out of Kimball Junction. You add tens of thousands more, you add thousands more. I mean, I don't know how much is enough. We have to think that through, but I think that we who are in the neighborhood ought to be, the HOAs there who represent the residents who live this every day, we need to be at the table in a much more involved way. And we're willing to. And I think I've attended many different meetings along the way. So that's my biggest thing about how much is too much. I think we have no upper levels. I think this plan actually clears the way for zoning. So I don't like this whole idea that it's just advisory. And then it's just advisory. It's like, I mean, I've been in lots and lots of planning processes for lots of counties. I mean, it does kick it down the way. If you get it right in your advisory model, you actually can create fewer headaches along the way.
So give us specifics, what's wrong with the document?
Number one, I think that there are no upper limits to density defined here. There has to be upper limits to density.
Give me an example of what an upper limit of density looks like that we can put into the document.
Maybe we can work with the planner tomorrow night in Kimball Junction to talk about sort of how much could we actually manage on it and bring out the trails people and say, how many more people could we just dump onto that trail system just as pedestrians and not shut it down for cycling and skiing? There's a number. It's not shut down now, it's kind of close. We're pretty crowded out there compared to other trails. The impact is pretty big. I mean, it pretty much gets destroyed for skiing very quickly. So I just want to say we need to come up with, if those values are shared and you want the amenities for the high density neighborhoods, and I hope you would, then we need to make sure we're preserving that. And then I think the other thing that I think is important, just as we're defining this, I had another point, was when you look at your priorities, it's large tracts of open space, and then it's recreation, and then it's an interconnected trail system. And the parentheses there, and this is page 3, says walkability. Every time I've been at those meetings, it's not just walkability. It's cycling, it's skiing, it's not just walking the trail system. Park City, if you were in Seattle, it would be walkability and cycling, it wouldn't be skiing. But here it's all three. That's what we voted on when we vote for these bond issues. So I think that's a flaw, and it's actually implied in your density planning, is that you're gonna give us walking. But actually, we like to recreate. So I think that's my points, and I appreciate very much
Thank you,
that
Catherine.
the response.
All right, so it's just past 8 o'clock. We're gonna put us in a little break. We'll take a 7-minute break and be back at 8:15. All right, if we can get back to our seats and just quiet down so we can continue the public hearing on the general plan.
Hi there. My name is Susan Meyer. Susan Meyer, yes. I live in Pinebrook now for about 10 years. Prior to that, I lived in Silver Springs for 11 years. And family, my parents lived in Summit Park for 30 years. And so we're kind of familiar for this side. Actually bought our commercial space in 1965 when the only thing you looked at was the Highview Branch. All that being said, I've long grieved the loss of open space in many of those areas. What I'm more concerned about is maintaining very livable neighborhoods. And I think the thing that, as much as I would like to see commercial space being developed at the end of my neighborhood, in reality, I used at the bottom of Pinebrook and at the bottom of Jeremy, the doctor's office, the gas station, the veterinarian, the grocery store, the nail salon, the dry cleaner, the restaurants, the pharmacy, and I had my student tutored at the bottom of Jeremy, and I had my seamstress when she was there, used her all the time. What that did for me is it made my neighborhood a lot more livable, and it made me stay out of the congestion of driving to Salt Lake City or going to Kimball Junction or going over to out by Home Depot. It saved the gas, it saved the air pollution that I would make by adding all those extra trips. And I actually think it makes my neighborhood one in which I want to stay and enjoy even more. I don't obviously want to see just anything going into the commercial space there in those places, but I do think that they make our neighborhoods enhanced, and they actually reduce the biggest problem that Park City is suffering from is the congestion and the lack of good outlets with our streets and things like that. For most of my shopping, I do not have to go out onto I-80 at all or go into Kimball Junction, and that's a good thing. The other thing I will say is that the thing that I love most about living in Silver Springs, if I were to decide to move back over there, it would be because of the walking, hiking, and biking trails. The reason I love Pinebrook and expect to stay there until I can no longer use them is the fantastic trail system. So in regards to the folks, those trail systems were put into place by the planners that developed those communities. And not necessarily, I don't know if it was done by a council such as this. But I just wanted to share my thoughts on that. Thanks.
Thanks, Susan.
Good evening, I'm Gordon Mills. I'm a part-time resident at Fox Point at Kimball Junction, and I'm also a current board member of the Fox Point board. The comments I offer tonight are really founded and informed by my experience in community planning. I served 9 years on a planning commission in Dubuque, Iowa, and chaired that commission, led the redevelopment of our comprehensive plan. So I clearly understand what you're doing, the good work you're doing, and how hard it can be. I also served on the Legislative Commission for the state of Iowa for 2 years, looking for ways to promote and present smart growth.
Could you use the button?
Sure. Smart growth in the state of Iowa. And I also served on the board of 1,000 Friends of Iowa, an organization that mandated sensible land planning and advocated for smart growth. And I clearly support the 10 items you listed for your goals. on the screen earlier today. After reading the planning document under consideration, I have a number of favorable impressions about that document. And it doesn't surprise me, for the 5 years that my wife and I have been spending time here, I've really been impressed by the good planning that goes on in Summit County, and particularly the care and concern that planning expresses for the strong, consistent effort to preserve mountain views, to protect open space, and protect the Park City lifestyle, which I think is so important. There are, however, 4 things about the planning document that I find a bit troubling. First, the planning document opens with a vision and background chapter, but moves directly to a mission statement without ever expressing a vision. To me, that is an important first step that really allows the community to express clearly what they want in the plan. And it was missed, at least from the document that I've read so far. Second, I understand the state told us to plan on 100,000 residents for the future. To me, that's simply a non-starter, as I understand Park City and the capacity it has for transportation, for trail systems, and for what resources like water. The idea of high-density planning in areas open for development seems at odds with everything that's gone before. Growth needs to be managed in a way that the citizens of the community find agreeable. Third, the plan seems open-ended, and while the words in the plan are well crafted, nowhere are limits placed on growth in a meaningful and effective manner. Summit County residents should have a significant say in establishing those density limits before any plan is adopted. A couple of comments and questions were raised regarding density limits. There's been a lot of research done in different ways to express density limits in planning. And one of those ways is the number of people per acre. Another has to do with the utility of the resources available to the community to support additional residents. And lastly, if implemented without a vision that is supported by the community and without density limits, the impact of the plan will have a lasting and negative impact on our community and the quality of life, and it will impact high social, economic, and environmental costs. Thank you.
Last but not least, I'm Jennifer Terry. I have a Facebook page called the Park City Pedestrian Passage. On that page right now is 448 people, including myself, and I share the interest in having alternative transportation, mostly bike and pedestrian, pathway at the I-80 underpass between Pine Brook and Jeremy Ranch. I have a standing poster panel just outside this room showing a proposal on pedestrian pathway design. I have lived in Jeremy for 10 years, and I've spent a lot of time designing a solution to traffic and safety problems in my neighborhood. My design fits your general plan. I've considered the big picture. It reduces traffic, it connects neighborhoods, it provides safe transportation for kids and schools in the area, and it reduces pollution and increases the quality of life. What I want an alternative transportation to be moved up on the priority list in the general plan. Right now, I don't see that, and I'd like to have more communication, and I'd like to have more people talking to me. I've given a lot of myself and my time to propose ideas, and I'm very proactive in my community and my neighborhood. But I want to have communication from you guys. I've written emails. I want to hear from you guys more. I also want everyone here to be aware that the Park City Pedestrian Passage Facebook page exists. And I encourage people in this room to take a look at it. If you're not on Facebook, I also post information from time to time on Nextdoor Jeremy Ranch email blast. And I do appreciate your hard work. I'm from California. When I lived there, I felt like I was a number. And here, I feel like I can make a difference in this town. So thank you for your openness and your kindness for hearing me. And I hope to continue our relationship further. Thank you very much.
You're number 11, by the way. Said you're number 11, by the way.
Oh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Good evening. My name is Pete Gilwald, and as you all know, I've been to many of these meetings and have expressed a lot of opinions. So I'm going to start with one of the pillars of the plan as described by Mr. Putt. And I'm a little concerned about the notion that you can't do any further entitlements until the Boyer project or some other project builds out a majority of their development. The reality is that if you want to solve open space preservation, if you want to solve connectivity, utilities, whatever, you do that through an entitlement process. Putting a stop the momentum while you're solving, you can't solve problems by just hoping that the current entitlements, which may or may not be sufficient enough to solve transportation trails and whatnot. There are other areas. The East Basin, if not allowed to properly plan and process something, until somebody else solves a problem or develops over in Kimball Junction, doesn't necessarily solve the problem in that neighborhood. So that's just my one concern about the pillar plan. With respect to policy 2.1 and 2.25 regarding town centers, resort centers, mixed-use centers, I would like to see some language talk about neighborhood centers. Again, if we're trying to minimize vehicle trips back and forth to Kimball Junction to go to a store or do whatever, if we're going to look at areas like the East Basin or Silver Creek, then having a neighborhood commercial component that isn't tied to the neighborhood commercial ordinance of 5,000 square foot footprints and so forth, that language needs to be included. You've got mixed use centers, but again, that seems to be on a larger scale than what may be appropriate for a neighborhood type situation. So again, I'd like to see maybe a little more emphasis on the neighborhood stuff. With respect specifically to the Bittner Ranch neighborhood plan, the first time the map came out, the area that's currently, I believe, in burgundy or red, that's called critical area steep slopes, didn't have a designation at all. And so now we have a designation of critical area steep slopes, and I cranked out a slope map based on some field topo, and the only area of that particular site that's 30% is the cut slopes along Bittner Ranch Road. The majority of the site is between 10 to 15% slope on average. So just throwing a designation on it for steep slopes seems to be inappropriate. And if I've got some copies of the slope map, so I'm not just talking without factual information. It would seem to me that that area would be more appropriate for low density residential, or again, depending upon what that definition is, maybe medium density, as a transition from the Nob Hill neighborhood down to the mixed use area of neighborhood commercial up against the actual Bittner Road and the interstate. So hopefully we can get that designation changed based on actual information from the site. The second concern I have is the designation of agricultural heritage. As Peter said earlier, the meaning of words is important, And until someone defines for me what agricultural heritage is, I don't know that anyone that got that designation, there's only 3 parcels in the whole basin, can support that. I don't know what that means. I don't know what that entails as far as a future development opportunity. If someone's going to show up and say, you know, the general plan says agricultural heritage, but it's not defined, then that's a tough road to hoe to argue about what it is and what it isn't. So again, definitions of words, things like heritage, you know, low density, medium density, what does all that sort of mean? So that's kind of where I'm coming from today. I don't have, you know, I'm not going to belabor the Jeremy Ranch plan, even though I live in Pine Brook, but because you've heard enough. But I think those are my concerns specifically with the Bittner Ranch neighborhood.
Thanks, Pete.
Hi, I'm Kathy Olson, Jeremy Ranch, and what I'd like to see in the plan is that the receiving area criteria needs to take into account the effect of increased density on surrounding property values. If you put increased density around Home Depot, the property values there will all increase. But if you put increased density, if your increased density reduces access to open space or it creates traffic bottlenecks in neighborhoods that have only 1 or 2 entrances, if it encourages development that's not in character with those existing neighborhoods, you're actually going to reduce the property values, which is going to reduce property tax income to the county. Thank you.
My name is Gail Warner. I've been here in wonderful Summit County for 23 years. I was one of those people that could only afford a condo, so I was appreciative that I certainly could afford a condo in Lower Pine Brook. I guess I'm here I haven't had a chance to go through this document, and I appreciate the fact that we're neighbors and we're trying to keep a neighborhood and also a community growing. I guess I'm here to raise the alarm on some past mistakes that we don't want to go through again, and that is some of the disrespect for wetlands. I live there at the cottages, and our neighborhood is very close to the wetlands. I'm not sure what went on in the past, if it was a trade-off, we'll build a pond across the street in order to build into the wetlands. But we are, you know, when we have the moose coming there and the families come back to their habitat, we're respecting that, and that's been good so far, but we are not always cognizant just over like across the street. I'm trying to think, Trap Creek was also built very close to the wetlands. So I think we really have to say, if we're going to respect the natural habitat and want open space, we have to be careful of some of the developers that have come in the past and thought, oh, I can make little agreements and whatever else was needed to go into this land, whether it's the view area that we want or the trails or just where our houses and condos are located. And I was also concerned about the fact that Walmart's snookered some of the past county commissioners years ago, that they grandfathered in at some point in the future, which we now have, super Walmarts. So that was something that we as a small community then, whomever it was, I'm not trying to point the blame because we've all made mistakes, got, they got the best of us, big corporation. And then the other thing that I'm concerned about with all these trails, I watch children and I'm an advocate for children, having been a past teacher for 32 years, that I don't see a lot of children walking in our neighborhoods. When I pick children up at Cards Park, I don't see them walking home because there are not sidewalks per se in all the areas, and we have all this congestion of parents idling in their cars and can't turn them off, but we have all this congestion to pick our children up. So that's the question: if we're such an outdoorsy community, why our children aren't safely having a neighborhood type of system for walking back and forth. So those are my comments, just so we don't repeat these mistakes in the future. Thank you.
Thanks.
talk generically about receiving areas, not specifically Jeremy Ranch and all of that, but my concern and I guess my request is that the Planning Commission and the Community Development Department would table the concept of receiving areas and make that into something like a general plan phase 3. And I know you've been working on general plan phases for probably longer than I've been alive, but the reason for that is, as I've researched receiving areas, a number of things have come to bear. It typically seems like with a receiving area, there's also sending areas defined. So you not only know where this density is going, but you know where it's coming from. As a citizen, we have no idea really where that's happening now. We don't have enough information to say, well, that's a good trade-off. We're willing to trade this open space for this plot of land in Silver Creek. We don't know that. Second, from what I've read, receiving areas are very, very complicated. You often have to set up markets to be able to trade the TDRs. You have to be able to define what home prices are, what the value of land is, and it's very complicated. And I think that takes time to do. And I don't think that time's been spent. I think the third thing is, there was a University of Maryland study out of Baltimore that showed that oftentimes the TDR process doesn't work as expected. You think the density gets moved, but in effect what ends up happening is more development happens. And they did a study of 12 different areas, and it's the first result on Google. And what happens often is that areas that wouldn't have been developed anyhow, say in a piece of open space that's been there for 20 years, all of a sudden somebody does a TDR, it gets transferred to a receiving area, and then all of a sudden development happens. So you end up getting more development by doing a process like this. Now, again, I'm not saying that I'm against receiving areas. I'm just asking you to table it, not push it through with this big general plan phase 2, which is a huge, effort and undertaking the way it is. I'm just saying, I think subcommittees spending some time and getting it right would be a good angle on this, because it seems like it's a very convoluted process, and I think with something that big, we want to do it in the right way, and giving us time would allow us to do that. So, thank you.
Josh.
My name is Chris Shore. First of all, I don't envy you guys want to be up where you're at tonight. I just briefly, I was here on a different issue and actually grabbed the general plan, started reading you guys' general plan, and we have 6 pages and you guys have got 50 something, so I feel bad for you. A couple things that, issues that we're dealing with over on the east side.
I just wanted to make sure everybody knows who you are. So Chris is the East Side Planning Commissioner. So he's our counterpart on the other side, dealing with general plan issues just like us.
One thing that we've been dealing with on our deal, and it's kind of been something that's hitting pretty strong here, is TDRs. I, for one, am greatly in favor of the TDR program. I would recommend that both you guys and the east side get together and work, and let's get a unanimous deal, and that can be for both sides. Because the issue that we face over on ours is their density tied to wetlands and also the steep slopes. And if we can move that density to someplace that it makes sense and keep that ground in that sensitive area, then we're better off that way. A couple things as I was reading through your general plan real quick tonight. The first thing that caught me was your loss of neighborhood character. I just read an article this morning it was on the Yahoo News deal, so take it for what it's worth, but they listed Aspen and Park City as 2 towns that are the most undesirable to live in because of the attitude of the people there. And they based it back to, and I'm not saying Park City is a bad place by all means, but what they based it back to was that the majority of the people that live there are not full-time residents, so the neighborhoods do not commingle together very well, because they're only there, you know, one house is there one weekend, another house is there another weekend, so they don't really know each other. And the other issue is the open space. I realize that open space is very important over here. We fight open space on our side. Having said that, the comments have been brought up tonight, and it was also in your plan about the cost of living. With more open space, it's going to drive your price up to where the people that can't afford, the working class, cannot afford to live here anymore. They'll move over to the east side because they can't afford to buy the house next to the 100 some odd acres of open space and all that. So that's an issue that I'm glad it's in your hands and not ours. Let me see. One other thing that I didn't see, and that maybe might be in there, was private property rights. I am a 5th generation, born and bred in Summit County. We fight like hell over on the east side for our property rights. I have yet to hear one person here tonight say anything about private property rights. I don't know your whole issue with things, but private property rights is very important. The thing about maintaining farms and ranches, I will be the last generation to run cattle on our farm over there. The pressure is getting too great because of growth. The ground is getting too expensive to run on. And it's just a matter of time before we either shut doors or find another place. It's a fact of life. My daughter does not want to do it, and I'm sure the same is with the farms around here. You cannot protect something that the people that own it do not want to do. It's just a fact of life. There's one other thing, it's kind of a comment that just to kind of lighten the atmosphere here, but everybody's been arguing about growth. Well, I wrote this down as I was listening. There's 3 things that are guaranteed in life: death, taxes, and growth. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Chris. Appreciate you coming back. Thank you very much.
I'm Brian Bittner, and I agree. Thankful that another rancher showed up tonight. I'm a sheep rancher, and it's a difficult situation sometimes to be in the ranching business when you've got multi-million-dollar homes all around you, and if a dog or a horse gets over the fence, then all of a sudden you've got a problem. So when you point out in our area that we want to have heritage agriculture, it's a little bit difficult, and we don't want to close the door on allowing some sort of development on our property. I'm speaking for myself also that most of the ranching that I have to do is in Wasatch County, and because it's so difficult, there's only me and our relatives, the Ozythorpes, in this area, and Ozythorpes have a lot of pressures also. It's a lot harder than it was before. And I'm 57 years old. I remember when I first came to the area, when I was born, there was nothing. There was a few houses in Silver Creek. There was nothing in Highland Estates, nothing Jeremy Ranch. It was Tom Jeremy's remnants of his place. And so I kind of find it interesting that so many people say, hey, I've got my cabin, so I don't want you here. I'm also president of Stagecoach Estates, and we have 108 lots. And I understand some of the issues with HOAs and part-time residents. And one of the things that we've had is roads is very important, as you know, to Stagecoach Estates and Glen Wild and Preserve. We would love to have, speaking of Stagecoach Estates and those subdivisions, we would love to have an upgraded road that would go up Bittner Ranch Road. And our family can speak for themselves, but my own opinion is that we don't mind having a connector road from Silver Creek, but you know, we would have to get something out of it. I mean, that's just all there is to it. It's just too hard to just say, hey, great, build a road through our property, and then, you know, then we have more problems with agriculture issues and our own personal use of that property. And then lastly, I would just say that if you say that there's no such thing as growth, then I would just say don't have any more kids. My kids would love to live in Summit County, and they're educated, they have master's degrees, but they're finding it more and more difficult to find affordable property, you know, in the area. And they do have to move to Colville, or they would have to move somewhere else. And even Heber's getting difficult now. So I just say, don't forget the kids, don't forget affordable housing, and just and also on open space. You know, it becomes more and more expensive to have open space, just like that critical area that you show up there that really isn't super steep, just like Pete said. I agree with what Pete said. And that's all I had to say. Thanks.
Next.
I'll be very brief because I know you guys would probably like to go home at some point. Or stay till midnight, you know, either way. I'll write my name down, but Asher Murphy. I'm in Jeremy Ranch.
Who is it?
Asher Murphy. Asher Murphy. Yeah. I'm not going to actually talk about the receiving area, so you'll be relieved about that. I think it's been amply covered. I actually did want to just add one more comment, because I think there have only been a handful of what I like about the area and kind of what I enjoy about it and want to see continue to be incorporated. I originally grew up on the East Coast, but actually moved to Park City from London, which you can imagine was a slight change of pace. Coming here and going from a city of 8 million to a town of 10,000, where I seem to run into the same people all the time. But one of the things that I really enjoy is that I can actually come to a planning committee meeting and be here with people who have both been on planning committees elsewhere around the country, as well as, you know, ranchers. I actually enjoy the fact that we have a rural part of the county that is actually most of the county. It's very different from anywhere I've lived before, and I think it's a critical part. And I think part of what for me makes that interesting is back to the gentleman whose name I can't recall earlier, but who asked the sort of more philosophical question around what does growth mean, and I too don't envy your role. It's a very difficult one, trying to balance all these different factors. But you know, I think one of the things I like about living here is that I do have to go down to Salt Lake if I want to go to Target or Costco or Babies R Us. That's not actually a problem. That's part of what makes it nice, is that we don't have lots of big box stores up here. It's not Sandy. It's not Anytown, USA. And you know, I think one of the things that was interesting, my in-laws were visiting from New Jersey recently, and we were talking about, I can't remember, it was a store or a restaurant, and they said, oh, where's that? I said, oh, it's at Kimball Junction. They said, oh yeah, of course it is. Everything's at Kimball, isn't it? Because pretty much every time they ask us where something is, the answer is, it's at Kimball Junction. And I think my exhortation would be to balance the convenience of that, and you know, I think an interesting comment made before about the amenities that we do have locally in Pine Brook and Jeremy Ranch, which are beneficial, but there's a point at which, not just for Jeremy and Pine Brook, but for the county in general, at which point it starts to go from being convenient to have more amenities to the traffic and general crowdedness that those amenities bring. So my request would be to be not just in Jeremy, but generally mindful of that. And thank you for your time.
Thanks, Ashley. Anybody else?
Put everyone to sleep.
Thank you. I'll be really quick. As you know, I commend you all for still making jokes and staying awake, and all the hard work that's been placed into this document, and also all the energy into tonight. I commend you for your reactions to acknowledging that you're hearing and that you are engaging and looking for input, and also in how you handle someone when they can maybe attack or, and with a lot of good reason when these are people's properties and where they live and their homes. And so I think everything, the way in which staff and planning commissioners, you've handled yourself tonight is commendable. And for all of us who have also been working 6 a.m. to survive thus far, I commend you all for coming and participating. My name is Julia Collins, and I live in Silver Creek. And I have lived in this community for going on 11 years, and I've watched it grow. And all these discussions of growth and development, we all get passionate about because this is what we love and why we live here. So, some things that I've picked up from tonight, the amount of growth that we're going to see in our community can go anywhere from 66,000 to 100,000. I didn't catch the numbers. But Utah, our region on the Wasatch Front, is the fastest growing region in the nation right now. We have twice the population growth than any other area in the US. We also have the highest percentage of millennials. 33% of our population is millennials. And what does that mean for our future? That 33% of our state is between the ages of 17 and, 33. And I came up here tonight because looking around the crowd, I didn't accurately feel like that was portrayed in our audience. And that is something for me that's really important when we talk about our children living here in Summit County and creating a future for our children and our relatives. So for me, I look at this general plan and I think, how can my kids afford to live in here if we continue with the same patterns of growth that we've already done? And it's so easy to throw stones. It's so easy to attack what's given to us. It's very difficult to provide solutions. And so I'm not saying that I have any. I'm posing some things that I see that could potentially help, but I think the task at hand, none of us have a crystal ball on how to unfold planning. None of us have a crystal ball on what growth is going to look like in 2040 and what the market's going to look like. But without a doubt, Summit County is one of the most desirable places in Utah to live in a very fast developing state. And so I beg you to think about the type of housing choices, which I think the plan accurately looks at, but the type of housing choices that we provide so that our kids can live here. If we continue with the same land use patterns that we currently have decided to do, there's only a very small demographic that can afford to live in Park City. And the secondary ramifications from that are a lot of things that folks have complained about tonight, from traffic, congestion, to just seeing more environmental impacts, to, a woman mentioned earlier the capacity to walk to places. And I think you guys have really addressed a lot of the aspects that we could potentially grow in a better way if we continue to put one more car on the road with every person that comes to Summit County. We're going to have a heck of a lot more problems than we do now. The other thing is transit. I look at this general plan and I look at some of the goals with transit. And so I think the land use measures that need to be coordinated in order to see those kind of transit goals need to be more aggressive. And we get scared when we see words like density. But I encourage the commission and the staff to think about good design and how good design and density need to hold hands in this document. Some of the examples in our region of good design is the Kimball Junction condos. Well, those were built and they doubled in value right after they opened up. because everyone wanted to live there. They wanted to be able to walk to the restaurants. They wanted to go to Maxwell's and have a drink. They wanted to bring their kids bowling, and they wanted to walk to it. And so looking forward, I think some of these secondary concerns, if we don't address them with land use, then we might still have many of the concerns and the issues that we see today. So I think a lot of what you guys are doing is commendable, and I think that a lot of the negative energy towards these concerns should definitely be looked into and listened. But there is so much good stuff in this plan that I'm really excited about, and I hope that it brings a lot of good things for my generation and for the generations to come in Park City, because we really are going to be the ones that live and breathe this plan. So, thank you guys.
Oh, sorry. Anybody else?